Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, your guide to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
Welcome to episode 62 of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by impactfuel.org. My name is Josh Weesey, and I'm your host. I'm here to guide you through the crazy world of motorsport sponsorship. Tell me that today we have our featured guest, Luke Lester of DirtTrax, SnowTrax, and SuperTrax. I can't really explain to you how excited I am to have Luke on the show. I've been trying for a long time to get him here, and we just connected so well. It was phenomenal. So make sure you stay tuned to this show. Ton of good advice and a really good conversation overall. Now, before I get into the structure and the actual interview, I have a few things to cover with you. One, I would love it if you went on to iTunes and left a rating review. It means a lot for this show. And I also like to read the reviews on this show. So the next one is from Bobby. And this 5-star rating reads, "Love listening to these interviews. It's so neat to listen to other people's experiences and hear how they have gotten into racing." So I really appreciate Bobby taking the time to leave that feedback. And whatever podcast player you use, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss upcoming guests. Our next one is Desert Racer and Dune Queen Ashley Burton, followed by Kirsten Armletter of Snow Riders and Riders West. So really excited to have those two on as well. To get some insider access to upcoming guests, go ahead and check out the Sponsored Rider Club on Facebook and request to join. That's also a great forum to ask questions and learn some best practices. Now, this episode is brought to you by four awesome companies. That's SolderWeld. They produce game-changing metal bonding technology. TopThePodium.com. They're experts in motorsport sponsorship. Bold Racing and Suspension. They're a family race team and custom suspension experts. And Armor Kote. They create products that make your cleanup easier. I also want to give a shout out to some of our other partners, including MBRP, HMK, Studboy Traction, and One Stop Performance. Now, the structure of this podcast is like a race. We'll begin with the qualifier, which is basic intro. In Heat 1, we'll discuss Luke's background. In Heat 2, we'll discuss sponsorship tactics and strategies. In the main event, we'll talk about mindset, and then we'll end at the finish line where we'll close things out. Without further ado, let's get it going. Well, hey, welcome everybody to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast. Today, I'm joined by our featured guest, Luke Lester of DirtTrax, SnowTrax, I guess you could say SuperTrax as well. Luke, why don't you fill in the gaps for that intro and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh man, I'm really pleased to be here to begin with and be talking with you and all of your listeners. As you said, I'm Luke Lester. I am the owner of SuperTrax Media Incorporated, which is the producer of DirtTrax, SnowTrax, SuperTrax Magazine, and we've also got a production company called High Range Media Productions, and that's what we do. And I love what I do, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, you know, for people that are listening right now, I wish you could see how many hours I've spent on YouTube watching like SnowTrax and DirtTrax and trying to make decisions about the next machine to buy. And so I feel like Luke and I have known each other for years, but this is the first time we've ever actually talked to each other. But I feel like we go way back.
Well, I hope that the decisions you've made based on my recommendations were good ones and you're happy with your choices.
I do think so, man. I'll tell you what, it's been getting harder, though, because it seems like everybody's stepping up their game. I bought a Polaris Razor. I've had a Razor 900, and then I upgraded to a 1000, and couldn't be happier with those machines. They're phenomenal. But most recently, I bought a new snowmobile, and goodness, they make some good snowmobiles out there. I mean, I struggled. I ended up going with Arctic Cat Turbo because I just wanted to try that. But man, all of them are good.
Well, you didn't make a bad decision. I mean, you're right. This time in the snowmobile industry and the world that we live in, for snowmobiles anyway, it's really exciting because you literally can't buy a bad snowmobile. And when we talk about things on the show about good and bad and whatever, I mean, we're really splitting very fine hairs here. Some people get offended when you say the sled they bought isn't as good as another one. I'm not saying it's bad, I mean, they're all great. I would ride anything that's sold today, and I can categorically say after seeing all of the 19s that next year's going to be even more exciting.
Yeah. That's the downfall of this whole snow industry, because I just picked one up. I'm like, oh man, that new one, that looks super cool. But that's the fun part too. And I know, for people listening, today is the 31st of January of 2018. and we're just starting to see the glimpses of the new Razor. What was it called? RS1 one-seater,
Mm-hmm.
and like that's pretty cool looking too. It's a good world to live in.
Talk about a good time to be a motorhead, eh?
It is, man. It's exciting. I know people listening right now. There's a lot of UTV racers, and a lot of them modify their cars to be a single seater, where they can still have a Razor 1000, but they sit in the center for a little bit more protection, and blah blah blah. And like I can only imagine what this is going to do to the racing world of having a single seat production 1000 out there. It's just going to be incredible.
Really kind of a left field, but at the same time hits the market dead on, and that's what Polaris, I think, is best at in the side-by-side industry.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't help, though, when I first saw pictures of it, I couldn't help but pull up the old Honda Odysseys from the 80s. And I was like, I got to see what these actually used to look like. And I mean, it's obviously that's a go-kart, right? But it's just, that's what I thought of.
Everybody said that about the Ace, but I think that the RS1 really does fit that kind of feel and vibe a little bit better, or the old Redline buggies and things like that. It's really taken it to another level.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I'm excited to see where that's going to go, and I can only imagine that the racing world is going to start adopting these machines and maybe create another class. I mean, they got some Ace classes that are out there now, but I wouldn't be surprised if this class blew up.
And it's a little less money to buy too, so that's always nice when you can have a racing class that becomes more affordable over time versus more expensive. So I think that's I hope that's where the future's headed.
Definitely. Well, that was a good quick intro. I want to dive a little bit deeper in your background though, Luke, and I want to know your story. I want you to take us on a journey. So let's start with how you kind of got into motorsports.
Well, there's absolutely no way I wasn't going to be in motorsports. I'm the son of, the motorhead himself, Mark Lester, and I have physical proof. I have photographic evidence of being 2 months old, and sitting between his legs on his Indy 600, strapped into a laundry basket with bungee cords, and we would go riding when I was 2 months old. So, I was born and bred with race fuel and fumes, and there was no other direction for me, and I wouldn't want to go any other direction anyway.
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, I know, and your brother is into this too, and it's you guys are all in it together, honestly, which is really cool.
It's always been a family thing for us, and that's one of the things about this whole deal that I cherish the most is my dad and my brother are two of my very best friends, and I mean that sincerely. So being able to do something for work, do something for recreation, do something you love with the people that you get along with so well, it's a blessing. I can't express that enough. But most people, when I tell them I work with my family, my mom is our accounts manager and secretary, so I literally work with my entire family, and we get along, which is bizarre, I know, but hey, I'll take it.
I worked in my family business for like 12 years doing lawn care, and I mean, there might have been some yelling. It was probably my fault 95% of the time, but there might have been some anger there. But we still we got along, but probably not to the same level that you guys do.
Well, we get to go blow off steam at 100 miles an hour all the time, so I think that probably keeps everybody very calm for sure. Growing up, AJ and I mean, we were involved in just about everything. My dad raced motorcycles, dirt bikes when he was younger in club level, and so we had dirt bikes growing up. We had ATVs. I think my first three-wheeler was a Suzuki ALT 50 when I was 2 years old. Way too young, but also awesome. And, from then on, I mean, it was just one thing after another. Snowmobiling was always that underlying sport that our family was just most passionate about. I love all sports with motors in them, but snowmobiling is where my passion truly lies. And that was what we did all winter, man, was we just rode snowmobiles. When I was 12, I got an Indy 400. That was 1992. I had a 1988 Indy 400 and put I don't know how many miles on it. I thought I was the coolest kid on the block. And, and then we started doing this whole gig with the magazine came first, and that changed the game in terms of having new stuff around all the time. And it's just snowballed from there. But I'm super thankful for my upbringing. I think that motorsports, when kids are raised with motors, it forms a different level of responsibility and respect that you just don't see in a lot of other sports. And I'm raising my kids the exact same way.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. When did you end up getting into snowcross?
It's snowcross. It's hard to pinpoint. I remember going to my first race as a spectator, and I remember my dad saying on the way home, he said, if you ever want to do that, just let me know. I'm not gonna push you into it, but if you do choose to, I'm there, and I'd love to do it. And I remember at the time, I think I was 15. I said, look, I think I was scared. So I tried to come up with an excuse that seemed like I was a wuss. I said, I want to drive to my first race. That's what I want to do. So when I turned 16, it was like, hey, you can drive now. Are we going to do this thing? And I couldn't get out of it. So we just did it. And after the first race of the day, I remember that one on my XC440, it was like, this is just the coolest thing ever. And then it consumed our lives for 7 years. My dad likes to say we never played hockey. We're Canadians. My family was never a hockey family. Yeah. We spent the entire hockey budget from our teenage lives in 1 year of racing snowmobiles. So we made up for it.
Yeah, that's if you're not playing hockey or a snowmobiler in Canada, we need to talk, right?
Yeah, or an ice fisherman. I mean, one of those three, and you're allowed to stay.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's cool. That's cool. So after that, you did snowcross for a while, and that was probably some pretty cool experiences. 7 years is a long time, actually, from a snowcross standpoint. So what kind of happened after that?
Snowcross was something I loved. I have great memories of it, but the reality is when you're a snowcross racer, you don't get to trail ride very much. You work during the week, you race on weekends, and there just isn't a lot of time to do the thing that you were passionate about before you started racing. In 2002, AJ and we became Canada's first Skidoo X team. And that was sort of the biggest deal to happen in Canadian snowcross at the time. And that was a big deal for us. Unfortunately, that same winter, I my head was bigger than my snowmobile suspension, I guess. And I crashed real hard, blew my knee all to pieces, and it was something that couldn't be fixed properly. So I retired and then realized how much I loved trail riding again. Yeah. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise, But yeah, that was where we went with snowcross. 7 years is a long time, but it was a great 7 years. And after that, it was just one thing after another to get here.
Oh, that's very cool. It's interesting too that you're saying that, like I really want to trail ride, and you got to make sure you have time for that. I know that's something that I get worried about sometimes, is getting very caught up and doing other going to events and traveling different places and, maybe overworking. And sometimes you're like, gosh, why did I get into some of this stuff? Like, well, I really just want to go out and have a good time. So I'm glad you're able to rediscover that passion.
For sure. And it, I remember the first winter after my knee was healed enough to ride and being really bummed not being at the races. But then at the same time, I put on more miles that winter than I think I had ever in any winter. And it kind of was bittersweet. It was hard to be upset about the whole situation. And today I look back on even that situation as I said, a blessing in disguise. So being out on the trail, it's just what clears your head. Having your head in a helmet is a good place to be.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Well, very cool. What about today? So DirtTrax and SnowTrax, you've been around for a while now, and it seems like you're on a lot of different platforms. But what's going on with that today?
DirtTrax and SnowTrax, it's such a cool business. It really is a cool business, not just because we get to see behind the curtain, but being able to interact with people. Right now, SnowTrax is North America's largest, most watched snowmobile show, and DirtTrax is as well North America's most watched ATV show. We're traveling all over the place. We're trying to keep the shows fresh in terms of how they look, in terms of the content. We're always looking for new ways to stay up on new trends in terms of videography and editing and things like that. But it's a business. You get engulfed in it, really. And day to day, you just don't realize what's been going on until you kind of stop and look back and go, holy cow, how far did we come and how did we get here?
Mm-hmm. No, that's really cool. I mean, what are some of the things, if you reflect on the years, what are some of the things that stand out to you?
Oh man, that's a good one. I think some of the stuff that stands out is a lot of the people that I've spent time with, and I always say that the best part about my job is the people that I get to meet, and the cool trips we've done certainly stand out. Some of the places I've been now that I've never been before, but just some of the people that I've met and formed friendships with over the years that I still call and talk to on every couple months or even every couple weeks in some cases. That's what really stands out in my mind as being the best thing that I can take with me from doing this.
That's a really good point. For people listening to this too, they're not going to see this all the time, but for me, I mean, that's one of the best things about doing this show. And I mean, after doing 60 plus episodes of this, I feel like I at least message over half of the people on a regular basis. And there's some people that, I mean, I would consider them my friends, right? Which is strange. You start with just maybe meeting over Instagram or over a phone call or a email, whatever it is, and you have talk for an hour, and then a year later you're like, I'm still messaging them like once a week for some random things, and it's pretty cool how those relationships form.
Well, I mean, the motorsports industry as a whole, in general, is about people. That's why we do this. That's why we ride vehicles. That's why we ride snowmobiles and why we go to races. I mean, yeah, there's this excitement level and the adrenaline rush, and of course the adrenaline rush of winning on a racetrack. But if nobody got along and nobody liked each other, you just wouldn't want to go back day after day, week after week. And I've always said, I always have believed that these sports are really based on the people who participate in them, and that's why people continue to do what they do. So that's the part I take with me, and who knows, maybe we'll be talking to each other every week. We'll see.
Right, exactly, and I just think that's pretty cool. And one thing, it starts really early on, where this like camaraderie builds. I recently released some podcasts with young racers in UTV world. So I had Caden Danbury on, and he's 9 years old, UTV racer, and he was on episode 59. And then Casey Sims, he's 13, and they both gave examples of how while they're racing, like before they even get into the cars and race, they're like, all the kids are going riding bicycles together and hanging out and playing together and joking around. Then they get in the cars and they just race their hearts out, and they're banging doors together and really going for it. And then when they're done, back on the bicycles again, hanging out, good friends. And they all promote each other on social media, like, oh, I took second place today, but gosh, so and so did so great, they deserve the win. They're just such a great racer. I'm like, wow, it's pretty crazy. I mean, can be a pretty cutthroat race, you'd think. And then in the real world, I mean, they're all happy and they're all friends.
Isn't that a great thing about kids, that they can be that way? And I truly hope that type of mindset and attitude for those kids is something that continues, because when you can be friends with the people that, like you said, you bang doors with and rub wheels with, that just makes your days at the track so much better. You spend a lot of time with these people. Even if you bash into each other or knock each other off or whatever, it doesn't do anybody any good to be an enemy. Just be a friend, and pick each other up and dust each other off, apologize, shake hands, and go out and try harder next time. And that really warms my heart to see kids who are that way when they're being so competitive. It's so good.
Yeah, and there's two other quick examples I can recall of that have just stood out to me. One was when I was at the 2017 Vegas to Reno race. I was pitting with Jimmy Moore of Bold Racing, and another car had broken down. I can't remember the exact car right now, but one car had broken down to the right of us, and the other crew to the left, their car wasn't there yet. And like several people from that crew went over to the other car and was helping them get their car running, and which is incredible. And honestly, the same thing happened to us. We had an issue that popped up, and that, I think it might have even been that same crew. They came over to us and they were checking things while we were working on our issue. So they went through and did like several of the car checks while we were fixing another issue, and we didn't have to worry about the checks anymore. And it shaved off probably a good 2 or 3 minutes on our pit time. And it was just like people automatically did that. So that's one thing that always stood out to me. Another one was an interview I saw a couple years back. It was when Ken Roxon was in the Supercross series and he got hurt like the second weekend, and everybody was expecting Dungey and him to really go at it all that year. And while they were interviewing him, the reporter basically said something like to Dungey, like, "Oh, well, now this is just in the bag." And Dungey was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" He's like, "You're not going to disrespect the other racers that are up here on this, the stand right now by making a comment like that." He's like, everybody up here deserves to be here, and everybody is going to put up a fight. So don't even make comments like that. And that was the year Eli Tomac really emerged. And I don't know, it was just, I like that stuff. I like that mentality.
Oh, it's a cool way to be, and I think it really resonates with your fans. It certainly resonates with your sponsors when you're that kind of a person. So it's a great way to be. I remember just another anecdotal story there is the year I won the Canadian National Championship in snowcross. I actually owe that win in a small part, but a significant part, to the guy who was in second place. It was Earl Reimer, and we'd been battling it out all season. We got to the last race, which was in BC. We shipped all our stuff out there, but we couldn't take our rig and we couldn't take everything we had. So we were kind of working out of this makeshift trailer, and I had to beat him by 2 positions. Sorry, no, I had to finish at least 2 positions behind him to win. Okay. And I mean, I was going to fight for the win no matter what, but that was the minimum I had to finish. Well, the last qualifier in my mod sled, I burned a piston real bad and just about burned the motor down. And we didn't have a spare motor. We didn't have spare sleds. We had nothing. His mechanic came over and brought us a can of some magic fluid that helped clean out the cylinder and get the aluminum off the side of the cylinder, and basically got my sled up and running so that I could race, and I finished with enough points to beat him. And if he hadn't done that, he would have won. And I just think, to me, that's something I will never forget, and it's something that is just such a cool way to be, and the right way to be, the way people need to be more often if we want our world to be a better place. That's how we should all act.
Yeah, that's a really cool story. I got a few shivers, maybe some goosebumps from that one. That was a good one. One thing you had mentioned there too was about how sponsors like to see that, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So just before we get into the whole sponsorship conversation, I'd like to take a quick minute to thank the sponsors for this podcast. I want you to think long and hard about this. Do you have the ability right now, if something were to break on the trail that's aluminum or radiator or AC line related, can you fix that on the spot? If the answer is no, I actually have a solution for you. It's SolderWeld's Alloy Sol Flux. This product gives you a long-term fix, not like JV Weld that's short-term, that's just going to get you back to the trailer. This one is going to allow you to easily repair an oil cooler, radiator, AC line, or any crack or hole in aluminum, and it's going to do it without the need to clean and decontaminate the surface. Very simple. All you need is MAP gas or propane torch to make this whole thing work. The Alloy Sol rods are actually capable of a 30,000 PSI fix, and essentially that makes them stronger than the parent metal, and they're built to last the lifetime of the part. Now, I don't want you to let a simple radiator leak leave you out of the race or broken down on the trail somewhere. I want you to have the ability to bring along some Alloy Sol aluminum alloy repair rod and flux from SolderWeld. To get yours now, you can use promo code SponsoredRider, that's one word, all lowercase, to get $20 off the aluminum repair rod and flux for the month of February 2018. Just go to solderweld.us and use promo code SponsoredRider. I hear it constantly from racers that a good suspension setup is absolutely critical for performance, and that's why I'm going to talk to you next about bold racing and suspension. Now, it's really critical to understand your suspension, and there's so many intricacies with the valving and the shims and all this crazy equipment that you need to actually rebuild and properly set up your suspension, that it's really important, if you're ready for that next level of performance, to partner with an awesome suspension company. Now, Bold Racing is that company. They're not only specialists with their suspension setups, but they also partner with companies that produce amazing custom components. And on top of that, they're a family race team. They actually race themselves, so they really understand the type of beating that your vehicle and your shocks can take. So what I want you to do is give them a call and just chat with them. Talk to them about suspension. Their number is 702-506-5354. If you're not ready for a phone call, go ahead and shoot them an email, bold.racing@yahoo.com. I don't know about you, but I absolutely can't stand cleaning the mud, filth, grime, goo, garbage off my machines after I go for a ride. It's just frustrating. It takes a lot of time. That's why I'm going to talk to you about Armor Coat next. Armor Coat is designed to help prevent mud, clay, ice, and other grime from sticking to your machine. It makes the cleanup quick and easy. It makes the machine actually look fantastic, and beyond that, it smells phenomenal. I don't know how to describe it, like bubble gum or something like that. It smells great. If you want to know more about Armor Coat, visit armorcoatproducts.com, and you will see their entire product line, all the offerings. Armor Coat is also working on some new stuff. They're soon going to release a solution made for coating the helmet and visor, and also one for wheels to help prevent mud buildup for high temp areas. So make your move now. Go to armorcoatproducts.com. Make a decision that's going to allow you to shorten the amount of time that you spend cleaning so that you can increase the amount of time that you spend riding and racing. I am constantly asking the guests of this podcast how they attract and retain sponsors, and on almost every single occasion, somebody gives an example of a resume. A rider or a racer resume is extremely important to your overall sponsorship pitch and proposal. And it's tough to do. I mean, it's not really the easiest thing. Anybody can go through and put together a resume, so don't get me wrong there, but it's really difficult to get something that's like unique and different and stands out, and that also is something that can be put across multiple platforms. Well, that's one of the things that I want to talk to you about next, is how topthepodium.com can actually help you build a race or rider resume that can be used on multiple platforms. I'm talking like website, PDF, something you can print off that's interactive, that looks fantastic. It looks absolutely professional. Well, that's because it's made by a professional. This is the type of thing that's going to set you apart from the crowd, and that's going to position you for a strong sponsorship proposal. So what I want you to do next is go to topthepodium.com, and if you have a question, there's a little chat icon that pops up on the side of the screen when you go to topthepodium.com, and you can go ahead and type your question right there. Jeff Vanestal, he is the owner of Top the Podium. He's going to be able to respond to you directly, so check it out. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. We're now in Heat 2, and we're going to talk about sponsorship. So with you, Luke, you're working with DirtTrax and SnowTrax all the time, and I know a lot of partnerships come with that. So who's some of your current partners that you work with now?
We work with so many people in the snowmobile and ATV industries. I mean, we're working with almost all of the major OEMs, and some of the sort of the secondary OEMs, that are up and comers. We're working with FXR, 509 on the snow side and the dirt side. I mean, we've just got so many great people. We got Kimpex we're working with, and just MBRP, so many great companies and big names that people are used to seeing. And we've had relationships with some of these guys for as long as I can remember.
So quick thing, the person that you work with at MBRP and that you've done some of your videos with is Jared Heshka. He was on,
Sure is.
Yeah, he was on this show, episode 26, and he's one of the people that I've built a relationship with. We hang out together at snow shows now, and he's set me up with some great product for my machines, and all around just an awesome guy. So I've seen him. He actually, I think, may have done the turbo exhaust install on one of your Arctic Cats, and I think there's a video for that too. So
I literally watched that video tonight on YouTube just before I came down to do this interview. I don't know why I was watching my own show, but I watched the show and it was that episode. I was watching him. So yeah.
That's awesome. And I'm running the 1100 turbo MBRP exhaust on my sled, and I just love it. I don't know. It's crazy.
It's musical, isn't it?
It is. I mean, this is my first time with a 4-stroke sled, and it's just a way different experience. But so many people stop me and like, "Whoa, it sounds so cool!" I'm like, yeah, I know.
There's just something about a triple that sounds great. I ride a Triumph Daytona street bike, which is a triple as well, and I mean, it was the nitro that got me to want the Triumph because of the sound of a nitro, that triple cylinder. I thought I got to have this in the summer, and now the Arctic Cats and the Yamahas sound every bit as good.
No, well, I will tell you though, in my opinion, the best sounding snowmobile ever, also a triple, SRX 700. Like,
yeah, a 2-stroke triple, right?
Oh my god, a 2-stroke triple.
Yeah.
And so my brother has a 99, and it's a triple, so triple pipe, triple cylinder, and it is just It's so magical.
I would go with probably like an XLT or something like that. But I agree, a two-stroke triple sounds amazing. My dad actually said in SuperTrax magazine way back in the day when triples were a thing, he coined the term triples being the national anthem of snowmobiling is what they sound like. And that still sticks in my mind today.
Definitely. Well, a couple of things I want to dig into with your sponsor specifically was something that, when I've watched your shows, I've always been curious how that stuff works is, so you have multiple OEMs. You might have Skidoo, you might have Arctic Cat, you might have Yamaha, you have Polaris. And like typically when we talk on this show, we think that those might compete. Same with FXR or 509. How does that work? I mean, is there a general agreement like, well, hey, we're all just promoting the industry, or is there anything where it gets kind of funky?
No, I mean, they understand what we do, and they're partners with us. They advertise with us because they want us to speak our opinion about their products. Now, we get a lot of flack whenever you do a story and you say something bad about a sled. It's because the other company paid you more, especially when you do a shootout story. Oh my goodness, it's endless. It's like you do a Can-Am versus Polaris shootout and the Polaris wins. It's because Polaris paid you more. And the great part about what I do is that they all pay us. So I can say whatever I want. I'm going to tick off somebody no matter what I say. So I just say whatever. But they know what we do. They know that we're going to be fair. There's definitely a lot of cooperation between, especially on the snow side, but dirt side as well. Those companies all cooperate. I'm very pleased to see how that works. But for us, we just make it very clear. This is what we're going to do. We're working with everybody. You're not exclusive, but we're going to give you a fair shake no matter what we do, and everybody's happy about that.
Definitely. Yeah, I like that. That's one thing I've always appreciated about your show too is, I liked seeing, if you flash a logo like this is brought to you by Yamaha, this is brought to you by Skidoo, whatever it is. And then you would hear in that show, well, I don't know if I really like the Yamaha skis and blah, blah, blah. And I like that. It's a different thing from, I think we see a lot of times from a rider or racer perspective, because we tend to be, brand specific. If you have, if you have FXR jacket, you're probably going to have an FXR helmet, and you likely won't have a Climb helmet or jacket. But if multiple brands are supporting at the same time as part of a show like you're putting on, then you're able to showcase all of the benefits as well. I think that's pretty cool.
It works really well for us, and there's different sort of agreements with different companies. FXR, for example, is the SnowTrax exclusive clothing company. So we don't wear other companies' clothing. But we didn't ever do a deal with FXR when it came to goggles. We specified that they were not exclusive to goggles, and we work with 509. They are our official goggle supplier for SnowTrax. Okay. So we have to do things like that because there's so many options in the market, and because there has to be some sort of exclusivity for these guys. But when it comes to the actual products that we are testing big time, as in the snowmobiles or the ATVs, we can't be exclusive to anybody. And then, I mean, that basically, there's already Destination Polaris on TV. If you want to see a Polaris show, watch that.
Right.
That doesn't work for us. But when it comes to clothing, we're not a clothing review company. That's not what we do. We review vehicles. So the clothing is secondary, but obviously, as you know, extremely important.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. I think from a business perspective, even just understanding the contracts, like you were saying, well, we're exclusive to this type of goggle and this type of jacket for this area. I think that's pretty important. I mean, no matter what type of sponsorship you're a part of, I think understanding those details is pretty critical.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, we are super fortunate in that we can basically choose some of those, not all of them, but some of those companies. We can choose who we want to work with. I would be happy to work with Climb. They make great products. I would never say anything bad about their products. And 509 makes great helmets. We happen to be with FXR, and I think that their products are amazing. But everybody out there is doing a great job these days. So my job isn't to ever say that one product is the best unless it absolutely is. Mm-hmm. But it won't always be the same company. And my job is to tell everybody the truth. And FXR makes a lot of great stuff. Some of the stuff they make isn't the best. And that's just the way it is. So hopefully that's why people can trust me when I say that stuff, because I'm willing to say the bad with the good too, right?
Yeah, I do think that adds credibility overall. especially when you're comparing the brands for the machines, right? I think that adds a lot of good credibility.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you say are some of the more influential sponsors in the industry? I mean, I know there's a lot of the OEMs out there, and I'm sure that those stand out too. But I mean, are there other people in the industry that are just really, really making their impact?
For me, I would say that the ones I've mentioned in the snowmobile industry anyway, 509 FXR, Climb is a big one. MBRP in the snowmobile industry is huge.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots and lots and lots of guys, Straight Line Performance and all kinds, SLP, those guys are great. All kinds of different companies, but there's certainly some that stand out. And fortunately for us, we get to work with some of those. So that benefits me, especially in this conversation. But in general, my view of it all is that it's the drink companies that stand out more than anybody. I'm sure you see that, your Rockstar, Red Bull, Monster. I mean, those guys dump so much money into sponsorships. It's unbelievable. It's hard not to just get mesmerized by it.
Yeah, it is pretty incredible. And I have obviously asked this question tons of times on the show, and very frequently those three companies come up because they're massive. I think I actually just in my interview with I can't remember if it was Caden Danbury or Casey Sims, but from 9 and 13 years old, they're like, well, RJ Anderson is like the top of the game. I was like, why is that? Well, he's sponsored by Rockstar. Like, how could he not be? Same with Amy Hood. Like, Amy Hood, she's on the top of her game. Why is that? Sponsored by Rockstar. Like, oh, okay. So they target, they take the money and they target whoever the top people are.
Yep.
And it works out. I mean, that's who we remember.
I'm not super involved in the racing scene these days. I'd like to be more involved, but I'm not. So I really don't see the sponsorships day to day that a lot of racers see. I only see what I'm exposed to sort of off the side, and those ones to me, and as I'm sure they are to almost everybody in North America, are the ones that really hit me hard. And obviously what they're doing is working, but specifically in each little different market, there's some bigger ones and smaller ones within those little markets, and it's a good thing there's a lot of them out there because people definitely benefit from that.
Mm-hmm, definitely. So these companies, they dump all of this money into programs, whether it's a show like yours, show like mine, a racing program, whatever it is. But what is it that they actually need? Like, what is it that they're looking for from a brand ambassador?
I think it's specific to the product. Obviously, if you're looking for a freestyle motocross type product, then you're looking for a different type of personality. But in general, what they're trying to do is they're trying to sell more of their products. That's not a secret. So they're trying to get a person, or they want to support a person who's going to inspire people to buy that product or to use that product or to want that product. And sometimes if it's snowmobiling, it's a lot more specific to snowmobiling. So a company who supports a snowmobile racer probably wants snowmobilers to buy that product. They're not likely looking for everyone to buy it. But when you support, say, NASCAR, like Rockstar, or like Monster does, or if you support Supercross, you want people from everywhere to buy your product. You're trying to appeal to the masses, to everybody, because everybody watches it. A kid who watches Supercross, a lot of them don't own a dirt bike, but they'll drink a Monster. So I think that's what they want. You got to be inspiring, and you got to make that product seem like something the average guy has to have.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I like how you said has to have. Like those kids watching Supercross, they might be like, well, look, I don't have to have a dirt bike because, I just like watching it. I don't know if it's really going to be my thing to ride it, but I tell you what, I got to have something to drink like right now.
For sure. I mean, you're trying to make a potential buyer. You're not just endorsing a product. You're trying to make a potential buyer feel like they're connected in some way to you if they buy that product. So I drink a Monster, therefore I'm somewhat like so-and-so, or I have a connection to that person. If I drink a Red Bull, I'm kind of like have this connection to Travis Pastrana or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's it's kind of a unique thing, because even I feel that way sometimes when I get a new set of skis or whatever. It's like, oh, he has those skis. That's cool. We're kind of the same.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean, one of the people who I message him all the time too, Sean Endel, he's on this show, episode 9, way back. And this should be the Sean Endel podcast because I bring him up all the time. But, he uses HMK product, and that's what I use now. Like after talking to him and hearing the good stuff he had to say about the company, and like we got connected, and I was like, okay, well now I switched all my stuff over to HMK. So it's like, I feel like I have that connection with him now. And
interesting story about HMK.
Yeah.
I worked with Kirk Zach, my brother and I did, with our race team before HMK was HMK. I actually still have the very first pair of HP boots that were ever made.
No kidding.
Yeah, he was with Heelside. We got a sponsorship with our race team when he worked for Heelside. And during the course of that sponsorship, we would call and talk about what's wrong with snowboard boots. Why are snowboard boots working for snowcross racers, but what's wrong with them? And so we brainstorm ideas about what needs to be changed to make a dedicated snowcross boot. And he started HP Boots, is what it was called first, and it became HMK. And Kirk is an awesome dude, passionate as anything. And I mean, I can call Kirk even today and just say, hey, buddy, I need a pair of boots. And he's always happy to help. I literally love that guy. He's amazing.
Yeah, he was on episode 53. So we brought him on, and he told his story of, about switching from snowboarding to snowmobiling. And, he came on with one of his sponsored riders, which is Tucker Mertz. And we all talked. And like after that, I was like, can I just work with you more? I don't know how yet, but let's just spend more time together.
He has a passion that is so contagious. It's hard not to get excited when you're talking with him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had called him afterwards. I was like, hey, look, I've had the same snow gear for like 15 years. And I was like, I don't even know what I need anymore. Right. And so he spent, I don't know how much time. He spent way too much time helping me figure out like the right combination for the temperatures that I'm riding. And like, we went through all sorts of jacket combos and pant bib combos, and we settled on one. But he put a lot of effort into making sure that I am going to have the right gear for what I'm riding in. So.
No, that's cool.
Oh, good times. So we talked about some of the businesses that are doing really well with sponsorship and kind of setting the mark there. But what about athletes? I mean, it could be racers, it could be riders, it could be just spokesperson in general. But who are those people out there that, if for folks listening, who should they be emulating?
Oh man, the list is so long. It really is. And I think, again, I start with snowmobile because that's what I'm doing right now. We're in our snowmobile season, so my mind is biased that direction. But you got guys like Chris Brandt, Jeremy Mercier, Brock Hoyer. I mean, everybody knows who Brock is now, and he's such a great brand ambassador for Yamaha, for Timbersled. Carl Kuster's a great one. I don't know if you've ever met Rob Kincaid and Dave McClure.
No, I'm working on it.
Honestly, if you can get one of those guys on your show, make sure you got a long time because they're hilarious. On the female side, you got Ashley Chafin, Stephanie Schwartz. Those are snowmobile people whose names come up, but obviously Levi. I mean, Levi is just, he is good for every sport. He is just amazing and does a fantastic job. Non-snowmobile, there's a monster truck driver that I really think is doing a great job, Brianna Mahon, or Mahon, I'm not sure how you say it. She drives Whiplash, used to drive Monster Mutt. She's just so positive, she's doing such a great job at being out there and representing the companies that support her in such a positive way. I really respect what she does. Jolene is great. She's the same. Travis and Jeremy Merrill. He's a great guy. So there's just so many names out there. You could go on and on. You could spend an hour talking about the people who are doing a great job right now.
Definitely. Those are that's such a good list there. We've had a couple of those on the show. So funny story too, Brock Hoyer, it was like the day after or whatever he won his first gold medal in snowbike, the first snowbike X Games. And right after he won his gold, I interviewed him like the next day or the day after. That was episode 10. And man, that was awesome. He's a very cool guy.
He's so real. He's just a normal guy, and the first time I ever rode snowbikes was with him. And it was that year. It was the beginning of that year. We went out with him and rode these snow bikes, and I had no idea what to expect. But he was just such a normal guy, and then he goes out and wins X Games. You're just like, wow, this guy is. It's amazing what a person can do when they put their mind to it.
Definitely. I definitely want to get Kincaid and Brandt and all them on this show too. Actually, I've been messaging Ashley Chafin like, come on. come on the show, come on the show. But I haven't quite broken through that barrier yet, that whole contact barrier. But we will get there.
She's really cool. She'd be a good one. She's really cool, and the female perspective is always good, right?
Yes. And Levi, I actually connected with Levi on LinkedIn, and he responded we started the conversation. Yeah, for people listening, I do all the forums, like whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, I hit up everything up. And but yeah, Levi was, we had Zach Mason on, and Zach's on Team Valley, and Zach, I was like, hey, Zach did awesome, and he's like, oh yeah, sweet, tell me about your show. And then I was like, I hooked him. Levi's hooked. Like, I'm to start reeling it in, and that was it. I know he hasn't even seen the message, the other message I've responded to him with, but we'll get there.
Interesting story about Levi, and Levi is probably one of the most down-to-earth, cool guys you will ever meet in any sport ever. But we did a contest with Polaris a few years ago where the winner got to go out and ride with Brant, and we would film it. And the idea was that Levi was going to be there too, and he was going to come out with us. So it was kind of like the race and the backcountry superstars, and you got to hang out with them for a couple days. That was the week after Levi didn't land his record-breaking jump and crashed really bad and hurt himself really bad, right? So he had just kind of was recovering. Maybe it was 2 weeks after. It was really close to that anyway, and he's still in a cast and on crutches and stuff. He didn't have to come to that. He still came to it and just sat in the lodge for the whole time we were there because he wanted to hang out with this guy who won, who was excited to meet him, and he knew how important that was. So he just came out and hung out with us, and he had absolutely no need to do that. He was off the hook. When you're injured like that, you can pretty much make your own rules. He came anyway. That's cool.
That is very cool. And those are things that sponsors take note of, right? There's traits about a person that sponsors want to connect with. They want you to see this person and say, oh, well, that's a good person. And then see their brand. Like I'm pretty sure Loctite is a pretty big sponsor for Team Valley. So I'm sure Loctite is like, oh, wow, we're a good company. And guess what? He's a good guy. And it just makes sense. Every time you see Loctite, maybe you think that maybe we're going to buy it.
Yep.
That's good. Going back to a comment you made earlier about, the ultimate goal is to sell product. And that is the case, without a doubt. But there's different ways to get there. And that's where all the details around what a sponsor truly needs comes in. So I read a book recently, and I'd recommend people to read this. You've probably got another year or two while it directly applies to social media, but it's called Jab, 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 Right Hook, and it was by Gary Vaynerchuk. And it's about how social media strategy basically sets people up for, to make more sales. And they talk about these jabs as if like you don't always go out there and try to sell your product. Same with these brands, like every single post that they make or that the racer makes shouldn't be to sell the product specifically. Everyone shouldn't be a sales pitch. You do these little jabs like, logo on the side of the car as it's doing a backflip or whatever it may be. You do these jabs, and then you get to a certain point and you can do the right hook, and the people are engaged, and then they actually do make a sale. So it's important to understand, I think, the sponsor's goals and use those type of strategies effectively because, ultimately, if you can increase sales for a company, then you're going to, improve your relationship.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, companies in general, they're sponsoring you for a number of reasons, but one of those reasons is the persona that you carry, and that persona has to be developed. And if your persona is that you just flog sponsors day in and day out, nobody's going to want to talk to you or listen to you anymore. They're going to ignore you. So building that persona around being a cool guy, being an awesome person to hang out with, being really, well-liked or whatever those things are, building that persona is what gives you the credibility to make those right hooks at some point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's definitely good stuff. And Gary Vaynerchuk knows what he's doing, so it's okay if everybody wants to tune in to either his podcast or some of his books. He's got some information out there
for sure.
So you spent a lot of time creating content. What are some things that people listening can learn from some of your strategy or tactics? Like how can they better activate on their programs?
These days, it's such a weird landscape because there's so much social media, because it's so easy to create content. Everybody's doing it. I think the key that people need to focus on is being different, not just for the sake of being different, but being different, for the sake of trying to represent yourself more accurately or more honestly than other people. I think that it's important to stand out without trying to just peacock and stand out in front of everybody, if you know what I mean. Because it's just a Me Too kind of place right now. Everybody's doing it, and it's so easy to just say, I'm just going to put my GoPro on and then upload to YouTube and say that that's my content. But there's more tools out there than there's ever been to create good quality stuff that really represents you well and stands out from the rest. And I think that's something, if I was going to sponsor somebody, that's what I'd want to see. Yeah,
that's a very good point. I know, looking through social media nowadays, it's tough. I mean, there's just, it's overloaded. I mean, if you hear about the problems at Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and whatnot they're having, they've run out of space to even show the amount of content that's out there. So, trying to figure out how to capture the audience's attention, I think is getting harder and harder every day.
Absolutely.
So I know for this podcast specifically, there's a lot of podcasts out there. They are everywhere. And, I think the approach I took with this show was trying to solve a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And, if people can position themselves in a way that they're solving a problem, I think that helps. I think that helps create, value, right? Create a value that for your audience.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you can pick a topic or pick an angle, like you just said, solving a problem or whatever. And as long as you stay true to that, and it's not just a fleeting thing. If I'm going to do this today and I'm going to do that tomorrow, then you're just like everybody. But if you stick to your guns in that one way, I think that eventually you begin to stand out just based on your consistency. And that's an important thing as well. Making content today, there's, like you said, there's just so much of it. And if I put myself in the place of a sponsor and I'm out there trying to find the next great thing, man, my brain would explode for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One piece of advice that, I can't remember who gave it now, but we've talked about it a number of times on the show since that point, is preparing. Actually, you know what? It might have been Kirk from HMK, but one of the things that he said adds value is, if someone who creates content, like maybe it's specifically for HMK, if they can just hand it to HMK in a nice sealed up package, like ready to go package, HMK could just post it. They don't have to go through and do edits and do tweaks and, create their own copy. They might be able to just take that finished copy and post it up on their site. And that at least saves them some of the rigors of trying to select what's the right content and things like that. If you can already give it to them in a pre-packaged, deal, I mean, then they're just ready to post it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, when we deal with companies like FXR, they ask us for clips and things like that. I mean, we don't just provide them with clips; we provide them with a finished product, and it's edited and it's timed and everything is good. It's color timed, it looks good, and then they can just, like you said, throw that up on their website. It's easy. That benefits me because they're more likely to post more of our stuff than somebody else's stuff who just throws them an iPhone clip and says, "Here you go. Here's some clips of me doing cool stuff with my FXR gear." It's a lot easier for them to use my clip, and that's the way you want to think as a potentially sponsored rider. It needs to be easy for them to sponsor you. It needs to be easy for them to use your content. It needs to be easy for them to promote you. Make it as easy as possible. It takes a little bit more effort on your end, but the benefits will be larger in the end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you guys play a lot in the YouTube realm and obviously television. But what other platforms do you see as still being strong, or maybe in the future that are going to be good platforms to be on?
We're kind of traditional, and in our position, it's like we don't want more platforms. I mean, we do, but we don't. It's like, oh my goodness, there's so much stuff going on. But I mean, YouTube is a great one, and I certainly hope that YouTube sticks around. You've got things like Twitter and Instagram. Those are good. They're such small snippets, though, especially on something like Instagram. It's such a small little clip that it's mostly good. I use it just to kind of follow along with people. I'm not getting a lot of information from it. I'm just following along, getting little clips, and then it directs me to go check something else out. I'll see something they did on Instagram, and then I'll go to YouTube to find out more about that. But can anybody predict what's going to happen? I mean, they're going to be beaming this stuff into our brain in the future. It's so hard to figure out. I just want to do the best job that I can do with what I got now, and I want to be flexible to roll with the punches when things change and new things come up. We're going to be flexible enough to just attack that as well.
Yeah, the comment you just made about beaming stuff in your brain a number of years ago when I was I'm in Michigan. I live in Michigan, and I went to Michigan Technological University for a little while, and they they require everybody to read this book called Feed. And the whole book, okay, I didn't read it all. Like, let's just be honest. I got some cliff notes for it, and I still presented on what I got from that. But essentially, the book is about a future life where everybody has microchips embedded in their brain, and they can access the internet, instantaneously. And it got to the point, kind of like in WALL-E, the kids' movie WALL-E, where nobody ever actually talks to one another, and
right.
They always know what the next best thing is, and it's crazy. But I think that the reason why they did that is to like scare people, like be careful, you guys are the generation that's going to create this stuff, so like, be cautious.
For sure.
The social media world is going to continue to evolve, and I'm excited to see where that's going to go. But like, the different platforms, I feel like they all, the ones that are there today, I feel like they all have their own separate little purpose. I kind of view Instagram, it does have the opportunity to link out to things every now and then, but I kind of see that as a brand builder, right? Like, Instagram is, what are the visual images that you want to associate with your brand, and, what people do you want looking at those images consistently? And then there's probably other ones that you might be able to direct more content to a website. I think Facebook is better at sending people to other sites and things like that. But I'm curious to see where it's all going to go.
For sure, it's an exciting future, and I'd like to think I'm smart enough to know what's next, but I'm definitely not. I'm not a techie guy, and the brains that come up with this stuff, they're so far ahead of where you and I are ever going to be that it's an exciting future to just be a part of. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think my goal is to just be adaptable. I think you may have even used that same word, but so I encourage people, like, if you don't have the crystal ball in front of you and you don't have, somebody from the tech industry that's feeding you these hints, just stay adaptable. If you see a new trend coming, and give it a shot. Maybe that's the next thing. Maybe you can be a first comer to that new trend.
Being first on is so valuable when something new pops up.
The next thing that I kind of want to talk about is the motorsports industry in general and how that relates to sponsorship. There's challenges, right? I mean, the industry itself is facing challenges. I know in the Midwest, from a snow perspective, the winters aren't like they used to be, and I know we're going to adapt. But what are some other challenges that you see the motorsports industry facing with sponsorship?
I think that there's this. One of the big ones for us, and one of the things that we focus a lot on at SnowTrax and DirtTrax, is responsibility and responsible use. And I think that's a big one. I think that right now people need to recognize that if you're going to be sponsored by somebody, they are endorsing you as much as you're endorsing them. And it's easy in our world where things are so transparent to make mistakes that can affect your relationship with your sponsor. And I think that's a big one. Everybody has got a microscope on everything these days. The snowmobile industry is under scrutiny all the time for safety. And there's all kinds of, pardon my political statement, but, liberal downtown media is trying to make us look bad. So if you're a sponsored rider, even if it's in the freestyle area, even if it's in, some extreme sport, you need to recognize that you represent the sport, you represent your sponsors, and we need people to be responsible and not make a bad name while they're trying to make a good name for themselves, and accidentally hurt everybody. And I see that a lot. I see these people trying to be out there, trying to get attention, trying to do what they think is right to get sponsorship attention and get their face in front of people. And in the process, they make mistakes that really hurt everyone, and that's a shame. So I think that just being responsible is a big one, and understanding that as a sponsored rider, you represent your company, you represent yourself, and you represent everybody who participates in that sport.
Yeah, that's very well said. I started thinking more when you were saying, you know, like the impact that some of these machines might have if you misuse them, things like that. But, you know, you can't deny it that you run these machines out in the world and they have emissions and blah, blah, blah. And I very much respect some of these companies who are pushing the efficiency limits of snowmobiles and ATVs and side-by-sides and stuff like that. You know, and we've got Nikola's coming out with some, you know, electric UTV that's going to still have a ton of performance, and, you know, you're seeing electric dirt bikes, and I'm very glad that the industry is willing to adapt too, so we don't just see things, you know, we don't just see the industry kind of drop off because of new regulations or, you know, emissions challenges, whatever it is. So that makes me very confident in the ability for the motorsports world to sustain.
Well, it's all about the future. I mean, without a future in motorsports, you and I don't have a job. So,
Right.
You know, let's make sure that we're always willing to be receptive to anything new that comes out. I'm always receptive. I mean, when four-stroke came out in snowmobile, you know, a lot of people were very non-receptive to that. But I looked at it like, this might not be great right now, but it's got a future. And here we are with 200 horsepower, 3-cylinder turbos that, you know, are incredible. And eight years ago when four-stroke kind of got rolling, nobody would have believed that was going to happen. So yeah, I mean, you got to be receptive to those things. At the same time, long live the two-stroke, long live combustion engines. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, too, the combustion engines, they're making changes, and they're phenomenal.
Oh,
right?
An E-Tech motor is unbelievable. I mean, you can pretty much let it run in your garage with the door closed, and you know, it doesn't even smell. But don't do that; it's a bad plan. But you know, I mean, they're just so clean and efficient. Even, you know, Polaris's motors use such little oil these days. Arctic Cat's new 800 is so much cleaner and more efficient than their old one was. It's just so good to see that happening, and it'll continue to happen. I don't know that I'm going to be pumped about an electric snowmobile, but you know, I mean, as long as they're pushing technology, it benefits everyone, and I'm open to anything.
And honestly, we need these companies to continue to make electric and whatever the next, I mean, who knows what else they'll come out with, but make that stuff cool again. I mean, look, the Prius didn't help us, right? the Toyota Prius came out, like, that's fantastic technology. You cannot deny how great that technology is, but the way they packaged it, it's not cool.
No, it is not.
Tesla, like, I want a Tesla.
I drive a Tesla.
Teslas are awesome.
Yeah.
Like, why would you not want a Tesla? But I mean, they made it cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
The brand is cool. The way it's presented is cool. And I'm seeing that with Nikola in their development of this new, you know, 1 billion horsepower electric UTV or whatever it is. Like, they're making it cool. And I think I think that's going to help, because, you know, just like when Razors first came out, right? It's like, oh, that's a golf cart, you know, and now, like, Razors are awesome. And four-stroke, I remember going to Supercross, you know, like watching Jeremy McGrath, and I can't remember who was driving the one thumper at the time, Doug Henry. Doug Henry.
Yeah, he was my hero.
The one thumper, man, and you're like, this is never gonna take off. And now that's the only, like, 450 class.
Yeah.
Like, that's the class. So I'm excited to see. You know, I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited to see where, you know, electric will take us to in motorsports.
For sure.
Ah, man. Well, you know what? I think I'm gonna ask one more quick question here around sponsorship, and that's just around return on investment, because that's the big thing. I mean, we already talked about it's important for sponsors to generate more sales, but how do you show return on investment? How do you prove return on investment? How do you even do that? How do racers generate ROI for their sponsors?
These days, with all the tracking that people can do in sales, I'm sure there's ways that you can track that kind of stuff. But I think for me, I'm pretty old school. I came from the sponsorship days when I raced were old school sponsorship days. I mean, we lived and died by press releases that were faxed. You know, that's how we did it. But I think that even today, the best way to get a return on investment or to give your sponsor a return on investment is results. So if you're a racer, you need to be focused on giving that company the results that they're looking for, winning podiums. And results aren't always about money and podiums, but I think that that's what people are looking for. They support you because they're hoping that you're going to perform at the maximum and represent that product as being a maximum performance product, or some product that is used by people who are the highest level of performance. And I think that's still the best way to do it. You know, focus on your results. I mean, look at Levi, right? Levi went from being a snowcross racer who had excellent results and freestyle racer to having excellent results to running a team now where he is focusing on excellent results from all of his racers,
right.
And people are responding well to that. But he still goes out and gets second place in speed and style at X Games. I mean, that guy is focused on results. And in my opinion, he's probably one of the best examples of how to be sponsored in the entire industry.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. You're not the first person to say that on the show even. That's good points. I would like to take a minute and do what I'm going to call a condensed main event, and we're just going to ask one question. We've knocked out a lot of mindset stuff, honestly, on this show already. But I think it's important to talk mindset. I think it's important to think about honestly, the mush between your ears. That's what makes all this stuff happen. If you don't have the right mindset, like, you might as well forget about getting a sponsorship. But I think part of that is trying to envision what's next, what the future holds, and that's what I want to talk about for you. I mean, what do you think is next for your motorsports career, and how do you know that's the right thing? I mean, how do you know you're on the right track?
For me personally, I mean, I have a lot of things I'd love to accomplish when it comes to motorsports. I'd love to do a desert race in a side-by-side. I'd love to race short course in a side-by-side. I'm going to race one of our big Canadian enduro races this summer for the first time ever. I just want to keep doing stuff with power sports. You know, that's where I'm headed. In terms of the industry, we're headed in a great direction. I can say that with confidence, that things are just going to keep developing and keep changing and keep changing for the better, for the betterment of the rider, the racer, the consumer. For me, how do you know that you're being successful? Well, I think a lot about this. And as a dad to two little girls and raising my kids and thinking about how my dad raised us and seeing my family, I think about success a lot and what it really means. And I just don't think it can be measured in wins or dollars or how many fans you have or how many accolades you get. I mean, those things are really good signifiers of progress. But if you're not feeling fulfilled and satisfied with what you're doing, if you don't wake up every day feeling confident that you gave it your all, you did your best, you pushed your hardest, you left nothing behind, then I don't know that you're being overly successful, because that's what success is waking up every day knowing that you left nothing on the table, and then at the end of the day being happy with that. If you're on that path, if that's your mindset and you feel that way, more often than you don't, then I'd say that, you're on a path to being very successful. It's easy to measure things in money. It's easy to measure things in trophies. But at the end of the day, measuring things in satisfaction, I think is probably the most important thing you can do.
Nailed it. See, we don't need a full mindset. We just need one question. And you got it. I mean, I'm reading a book on this right now. People write books on this type of stuff because it's ultimately is how you feel about what you're doing, and if you feel like you're heading in the right direction. And like you said, the stats, the numbers, all that stuff is great, but only if it makes you happy. If it doesn't, then yeah. I
mean, as a rider, as a racer, you need to be focused on those things, because that's what's going to continue your career. Without your sponsors, you're probably not going to be able to do what you love very long. These sports aren't cheap, right. Especially snowmobiling is like one of the most expensive sports you can possibly do these days. But you got to focus on that. But you got to figure out why you're in this. If you're in this just to get trophies, if you're in this just to make money, then you're probably never going to be satisfied, because at some point you're going to stop getting trophies and you're going to stop making money and you're going to feel like you failed. So you got to figure out, am I in this just for that, just for fans to adore me, just for, to brag to people that I'm that good? Or are you in it just to feel like you did everything you could do and you left nothing behind? And in my career, I had to quit because of an injury, but I feel like even that last race I was on, I went out trying to do something, give it my all, and it didn't work in that case, but at least I know I didn't hold anything back. I never held anything back, and hopefully never will. And I'm going to raise my kids the same way. Don't worry about what other people think, or whether you're monetarily successful or whether you got trophies all over the wall. Just do what you love, do it to the best of your ability every single day, and go to sleep with that satisfaction, and you just won.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, you made another comment on there about you want to get into a UTV and do some desert racing. And let me tell you, you came to the right place to say that, because we're going to get you set up. I guarantee you we can get you in a UTV and do some desert racing.
Oh, man, I've done so many different types of racing and side-by-sides. I've done cross-country stuff and crazy through the bush rock crawling stuff, and we've always done really well for these guys from Canada that nobody really knows, and we're not in this racing scene. And I just feel like, man, if I could get behind the wheel of a desert car and just go for it, I feel like I could do okay at it, and I want to do it. It's on my bucket list before I die. So hopefully one of your listeners is like, we'll give them a shot, we'll see what happens.
We're gonna talk after the podcast. We're gonna get some names set up. We're gonna get you in a car. It's gonna happen.
Well, we can do a show on it too, so it actually benefits everybody involved.
Oh yeah, it's gonna happen, and it's gonna be good. Put it on your 2018 bucket list.
There you go. Okay.
Everybody listening, you better follow up and make sure that I actually get this thing figured out for them. But some accountability partners out there. Well, cool. I think it's time to wrap things up at the finish line. If you could sum this whole thing into just one statement, one tip, what would that be?
If it's about sponsorship, I think you need to be positive all the time. You need to portray a positive image. You need to remember that your sponsors are endorsing you, and how you conduct yourself is extremely important for both them, your sport, and yourself. And again, have fun doing what you're doing. If you're not having fun, stop doing it, because people are eventually going to notice, and they're not going to be inspired by you. So have fun and do your best every day. And I think that eventually you will succeed.
Yeah, definitely. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
The best way definitely is through our websites. Our info email on our websites at supertraxmag.com or SnowTraxTV.com, DirtTraxTV.com. If you just click info and in the subject line put, message for Luke, it always comes to me. And I always answer those messages, as soon as I possibly can. And I love hearing from viewers. I love hearing from fans, or anybody who watches the show has questions, even criticisms. They'll keep them nice. I love that stuff. So definitely reach out. It's my favorite part of this job, and that's the best way to get a hold of me.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us tonight, share some of your experiences and your advice. But at this point, I'm going to leave you with this. Have fun and ride safe. As always, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast. Make sure that you subscribe, regardless of what podcast player you are on, so you don't miss any of our upcoming guests. Specifically, we have 2 coming up, Ashley Burton, followed by Kirsten Armletter. Super pumped for those episodes to release. Also, head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review. It does so much for this show, so please take the time to leave a rating and review. If you have any questions or guest recommendations, feel free to shoot me an email, podcast@impactfuel.org. A special thanks for this episode goes out to our sponsors, Armor Kote, SolderWeld, Bold Racing, and TopThePodium.com. Additionally, I just want to give another quick shout out to our other partners, MBRP, HMK, Studboy Traction, and One Stop Performance. Make sure that you are following us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. I look forward to serving you again next week. Until then, have fun and ride safe.